circle back around at the end of October.
Do you need me to get my recorder?
And kind of they'll polish up some of their recommendations based on some of what they heard yesterday.
And it was specifically rates?
Yeah, how to structure the rate, how to structure the new rate, or presenting 3 different potential rate structure changes from what it is currently, not from a fixed system to either one of 3 that they were thinking of. And there was just some discussion on whether or not the actual numbers they used to base any one of these 3 were good, bad, or legitimate. So they'll go back and do some work.
Sounds tedious.
It is. It was a little over 4 hours of going around and around and around.
Oh.
Yeah.
So thank you both
This
for...
is the job I want.
This is government.
You're just trying to talk me out of this, aren't you? You're going for that. Let me tell you about the meetings, Barb strategy. See if I'll just run away.
Well, thank you both for coming in, and this will be about 45 minutes, and the idea is we're not trying to create a cat fight, and you guys seem very cordial.
Absolutely.
This is an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more specifically about some issues, chance for you guys to talk to us. Ultimately, the best way that we like to run our endorsements is we provide sort of a dialogue or a discussion. So explain where you stand, and we obviously will give an endorsement, but also hopefully that from our readers looking over what we write, they can say, like, Source, we don't really agree with your conclusion, or how it lines up.
Okay.
When do you expect to publish that? Do you?
16th, if that's whatever that Wednesday is, that's right in the middle. So it's we try to time it obviously to hit when the ballots, and then we will run that the sheet each week subsequent to that, as well as the Q&As are online.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, on video out, fall back and
yeah.
The frizziest day of the year, man. Portland.
And so hopefully if you can try to limit to 2 minutes per answer, it'd be great, just so we can cover a lot of stuff, and we'll leave some opportunities for if there's things that we don't ask, that just give your pitch for the endorsement. But why don't we start with how's the campaign going so far?
The campaign is going very well. I've got the Oregon League of Conservation Voters endorsement, which I'm very happy about, and have just got some really strong people helping me on my team, which is good. We've been out hitting doors. We hit a few hundred, specifically for last night's meeting for Slower, Safer Bend. We specifically hit doors for the Climate March, which was on Sunday, was another event that we were, my business co-sponsored the Climate March, so went ahead and did some campaigning with that. I think the most effective campaign so far was having my little dog run in the Wiener Dog races wearing a Barb Bend banner. So that was good. It was a tough heat. In his heat, actually 2 of the dogs actually ran for the finish line, which was remarkable. In the heat before, none of the dogs ran for the finish line. So
when you've been knocking on doors, what do you feel like you've heard as a primary concern that resonates with you, or that you're taking into your policies?
I think, it seems like 2 things which are related, and one is public process. People feeling like they're, not being heard, they're not having a chance to work with the city council, to have their input, be valuable. And then that kind of goes along with people are concerned about their neighborhoods. The OSU Cascades, the siting of the OSU, I'm not telling you guys anything new. The siting of the OSU Cascades campus is very much on people's minds. And then also the vacation rentals. I was at the last city council meeting, and the room was just packed full of folks worried about vacation rentals. And then it kind of turned over and was packed full of people worried about where's OSU Cascade's going to go, and how is that going to affect their neighborhoods?
And I'm gonna do this a little bit reverse order. I want you to respond to, is there enough opportunity for public input? I mean, because in some ways I heard two different things from you. I heard that city council was there and you were listening last week to concerns, but then I also heard that people are saying that there's not enough opportunity. What's your perspective on how available you are, how available city council is?
Yeah, I think that the culture has changed greatly in the last 4 years. I think Eric King has done a fantastic job of changing the way the city interacts with the public. Bringing on Anna Rond as the communications director and the liaison between the public and the city has been a big improvement in that. And I think that all came about because there was a time not so long ago that there was not a whole lot of verbalized public process, and it was a big concern of both the council and the staff as the staff kind of changed the internal culture. So where we are today is far above where we were 4 years ago, but that being said, there's always room for improvement. The part of the problem is that we get about 1% of the population paying attention at any great length, and about 1% of that 1% actually comes and is vocal about something that affects their life. And so you never have a real sense of how many people have actually heard your message or have paid attention beyond the headlines of local publications. So I think that we learned a lot from the Surface Water Project, moving into the SIAG process with the Sewer Infrastructure Group. That was a result of the fact that we had pushback that we hadn't been vocal enough. There was tons of public process in the Surface Water Project, but again, that 1% that actually paid attention to it and the 1% that showed up wasn't a fair representation of the public at large. So moving forward in any of those larger processes, it is in the plan that we will have a lot more committee interaction and a lot better job of letting people know when we have public meetings and what the format of those public meetings is.
Yeah, it's easier to complain than to contribute.
And unfortunately, most people are busy with their everyday lives, their head is down, they're trying to pay their mortgage or run their business, and they don't really realize how something affects them until it's right in their lap. And oftentimes when you have that kind of reaction, you don't necessarily come to the table with all of the information. So I understand why it happens, but at times it's challenging to make public process when you're continually reacting to both the criticism and the impression that there hasn't been enough public process.
I'm going to ask a question about campaigning, then Aaron can provide some more specific questions here. But how's it campaigning as an incumbent? I mean, how is the campaign going for you, and what differences do you feel?
It's a time challenge more than anything, because sitting as a counselor, in addition to the counselor duties, we have all of our committee duties as well. I'm on 6 different committees, and they all meet during the most inopportune times for a business owner, and so it has been a little bit of a time scheduling challenge to do some of the greater things that I had done last time. The door knocking and all of that stuff will probably come later because of things going on in my personal life and things going on in my council. But that being said, I only won by 3 votes out of 21,000 last time, and so every single room I'm in or conversation I'm having, I just make sure people understand 2 things. One, that they understand that they should do their homework and they should find out about the candidates so that they know where the differences are in the candidates, and 2, that they actually check the box on the ballot. I appreciated that last night when you said that, because 9,100 undervotes in a race for city council is just, to me, really unacceptable. People who vote for the president but don't vote for their city councilor who makes policy that affects their daily life just really baffles me. So that's been a big part of my message.
Yeah, and I guess I'll take that opportunity to sort of skipped over that, but thank both of you, I mean, for running and for serving. I mean, it is the article we had last week, I mean, it's not for the money.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, I mean, you were both seemingly sane, smart people, and so it's appreciated that you guys are doing that.
Outside of the fact that we're actually spending time and money to try and get a position like this. We are sane, I think.
I know. Yeah.
I got a lot of chiding last time because Chuck and I, who was my opponent last time, we're very amicable. We're friends. I don't feel that either one of us went after each other, and through the whole process we had similar ideals and different ideals, but we had a great dialogue, and I kind of feel the same. I don't think I also have that respect about the fact that anybody who wants to get involved in committees or put themselves out there in the public eye to scrutiny and criticism, and so I'm pleased that it's not an uncontested race. I think that it shows people in the community that it's okay to get involved and encourages that. So I'm always happy about that.
Good, thank you.
Great. Well, to get into kind of the nitty-gritty stuff, obviously one of the big things that City Council does is determine how funds are spent. So I thought it'd be interesting to ask if you had an additional, say, $250,000 to spend, would you put that toward the general fund, or would you earmark it for one or more specific things? And if so, what? And Barb, if you want to start with that.
I think the correct answer is in the general fund, but for specific things within the general fund. In the general fund right now, in particular, it's streets. With the Slower, Safer Bend group, I've just been doing a lot of research and participating in those discussions, and just the talk of, as far as the city's assets go, our streets are, by far where so much of the money has gone and so little of the maintenance. And, we're starting to see the street I drive on every single day up on my East Side neighborhood. It's really, just in the last year has just gotten a lot worse. And the folks that work, in the road department talk about the need to maintain the streets, once they get to a certain level of deteriorating, the costs really start climbing for repairs. If you can chip seal before you get the great big cracks, you're really saving some money, and that money just isn't there. And so, one is just maintaining the system that we have, and then two, what I really see as the need is to improve conditions for folks that would like to get out of their cars, for folks that want to walk, for folks that want to ride their bikes. The connectivity of our bike lanes is a real problem. Mm-hmm. My nephew is 14, and he, last year as an 8th grader at Realms School, rode his bike from over by Bend High out to Realms every single day, including the snowpocalypse. Mm. And, I don't know if you'll find anybody else in town who did, and, he will tell, just so many of these, really nice, great bike lanes, and suddenly it's just gone. And there you are, in with traffic. The safety, there are 2 canals right now. The crossing over the canal over there by which elementary school is by Pine Nursery? Which one is that?
I can't remember what it's called, but I know.
Thank you, I'm sorry. And so it's on Purcell, where Purcell goes over the canal there. The kids there are walking in on a really narrow shoulder, just right with traffic to get to school. And then the other place is where 3rd Street crosses the canal right before Freddy's, right before you get to Freddy's. And there are a surprising number of pedestrians right there that are trying to get across there. So, yeah, traffic, roads.
Okay.
Thank you.
She's pretty right on. I mean, the primary function of government is to provide infrastructure and public safety. That outside of that, you start getting into kind of pet projects. And part of the challenge is that everybody, as soon as times are perceived to be getting better, everybody lines up at the table and lobbies for their cause for additional funds to be spent on their project. That's both from the public sector and from the department heads internally. So $250,000 isn't going to solve a majority of anybody's problems, and with a long line of people waiting for expenditures, that I'm imagining that $250,000 would be divvied up among some of the ones that we prioritize as being more important than others. But roads are really in bad shape. We've had Paul Rial from the Public Works Department come to us several times and update us on the index, and the index has to do with the maintenance and what a perfect road looks like and what the worst case scenario is, and we're at about a 65 right now, which means that there's a majority of our roads that are in beginning stages of failing or are already failing, and the money just hasn't been there to raise that index. So council has already said that that's a priority moving forward in the next budget cycle, the next biennium, is to increase the amount of money that we put towards maintenance. It was a big help that the voters went out and approved the $30 million bond, because that was replacing roads that would have needed to be maintained, that had lots of traffic on them, and we were fortunate that those came in under budget, so there will be some of those monies moved to other projects that were further down on the list, and it'll help us raise that index a little bit. But I think you'll see that now that the water project is moving along, and if we can get it out of litigation, Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Group made some of their recommendations with a solid plan for the next 20 years that saves us a lot of money, and I think roads will probably be the next thing that you'll hear everybody talking about internally, where if property tax revenues come in higher than we expect, which they will, we will have some flexibility to allocate that towards street maintenance.
I want to switch over to maybe a little bit more of the hot button topic, the vacation rental debate. I see it at least framed, and it's looking at residential livability and tourism economy. Mm-hmm. And I think in the next year, whether on council or on council, this is going to be one of those topics that City of Bend will need to deal with. What do you feel like is City Council's role, and how do you feel, like that in terms of also balancing that idea of a tourism city as well as a city that's very much about livability? Start with you.
You hit it right on the head. We have to find some sort of a balance that maintains personal property rights within the limits of the law, and also maintains the livability within some of the neighborhoods. And it's not an easy solution, because unfortunately we are a tourist-based town. We haven't expanded the UGB, so land prices are starting to escalate to such a point that some people can't afford to buy a house without having some sort of an income supplement on that house. Mm-hmm. We also have a lot of conditions where people buy houses in Bend, they don't live here, but they intend to live here at some point and want to get in before real estate prices prohibit that, and so they'll buy a house now knowing that 10 years from now they're going to move here and help pay for that mortgage in those 10 years by having someone else take advantage of their house through vacation rentals. And then you look at situations like 2 or 3 of our neighborhoods that came to protest the other night, that they have 3 or 4 on their block, and the livability issues and challenges that brings with it. And so right away the knee-jerk reaction was to clamp down, put a moratorium on this, and don't allow any more. And there were legal aspects to that just don't make that possible. We can't go back retroactively and tell somebody who's been using their property for a function that you can no longer do that. So deep breath was taken, step mm-hmm. back, and now evaluate how we achieve some sort of policy from the city level that allows a reasonable amount of this to happen, maintaining property rights for individual property owners without greatly affecting the livability of neighborhoods. But so far the data just is not there, outside of people who live next door to one, that they have been a problem any greater than the occasional problem to those right next door. So mm-hmm. it makes it a little challenging.
Are there any models or any cities that you're looking at? The city of Ashland has effectively banned, you mm-hmm. can't do a rent less than 30 days. Yeah,
and there's 2 towns on the coast that have done the same thing, and that's going to be, I think that's going to be a policy choice based on each individual councilor. I think that there are councilors who feel one way, like myself, and councilors who feel another way. And I look at it more from a personal property rights standpoint than anything. As long as you're not abusing the system, there are means by which you can complain or address a problem if there actually is a problem. Then I think that our position is to make sure that neighbors aren't killing each other, but we can't, I think we still have to maintain that flexibility for property owners to do what they want with their property.
I think as far as the city's role, which, I think honestly is the best part, in my humble opinion, of your question, and I think it goes down to the codes. We need to address the codes for vacation properties and get some consistency there. Just in the testimony at the city council meeting, they heard from a couple of different people, most of the individuals, that there were some folks that had single vacation, they were just renting out their own home, is what I'm trying to say. And they spoke about a type 1 permit, which is really just a rubber stamp. You pay about $500, it's like $400 or $500, and you get a piece of paper that says, yes, you can have a vacation rental. And then there's a type 2 permit that's a little more detailed. I'm honestly not sure. It seems like maybe there's an inspection there. You have to be sure you've got enough parking, maybe more money.
Your neighbors can weigh in.
Your neighbors can weigh in, thank you. And there were a couple of folks that managed more than one vacation rental, and then they had that kind of permit. And, why is that different? And then the other thing that came up was, it just seemed to a number of us, and, as Scott mentioned, at the council meetings, you kind of have to take testimony with a grain of salt. You're getting anecdotal evidence, and you're getting people's personal stories, and, how wide a representation do you get. But anyway, as far as B&Bs go, there was an owner of a B&B saying that for her to maintain her bed and breakfast was, much more, it was a much more, I don't want to say onerous, but I will say onerous, procedure to maintain that, which seems kind of contradictory. In a bed and breakfast, the homeowner is there and is keeping an eye on things and is not letting parties get out of hand and is making sure that, the neighborhood is being protected. And so in some ways it seems like a bed and breakfast, from at least that perspective, is maybe a better for the neighbors thing, and maybe something that should be easier for you to do. I think a lot of what came up was density. They pointed out 3 different streets where more than, and by streets I think it was just single city blocks, where more than half of the homes have been converted to vacation rentals. And there were the concerns about noise, about parties, about no parking, but more than that was just losing that feeling of community and losing that feeling of their neighborhood. And so I think there are a couple of ways the city might address that problem of density. One would be obviously just hit at density and say, this is going to be the number per block, or this is going to be the number per neighborhood. That might actually open up more opportunities for folks in other parts of the city to make money with their properties. I don't live here in the inner east side, and I might be able to rent out my house. And then the other way to approach that density problem might be to go with the amount of time. Someone suggested, 60 days out of the year you can rent out your home. And then that would open more to almost that kind of sharing where somebody from Paris comes in and gets my house while I go to Paris and get their house. And that kind of a vacation rental, still maintaining the neighborhood feel, because the homeowner would be there most of the year, or they'd rent it out to a long-term renter most of the year.
So I kind of want to zoom out a little bit based on things you were both saying. Obviously, you share some views and just, want balance and all this kind of things, but want to kind of get more to the heart of what the differences might be. And so I want to ask kind of, what do you think the role of city government should be in our day-to-day lives? I mean, you've mentioned some things, Scott, about, obviously you don't want people killing each other in their neighborhoods, but I kind of get the sense that maybe you're a more pulled back perspective, and maybe Barb's, certainly correct me if I'm wrong, Barb might favor more involvement. And so kind of where's that threshold for you in terms of where the city should get involved in livability and other factors affecting people's daily lives?
I think you're right. In your observation of me, I'm much more of a larger policy person and not a daily micromanagement of lives and property kind of guy. I mean, that's kind of a general statement, but I think that the role of city government is to ensure that things in the city don't get out of hand, but that they don't try to micromanage the daily lives of the citizens who live in it.
Okay.
I don't really know how to, it depends on the issue, of course, and so, I'm just kind of, that's a 30,000 foot elevation, but it probably is a distinct difference between where we are, so, I don't know. I might have a different answer if you ask me specifically about some policy that was more of a hotbed than another one, but basically that's kind of the overall picture.
I think this ties in to the previous discussion we had about getting people to vote for city council. How many people will vote for the president but then won't vote for city council? Because in fact the role of the city government, they actually do play a very noticeable, very tangible role in people's lives. To me, it is, I just look at that word representative. My people are electing people to, essentially be their voice, there at city council, because as we've mentioned, people are busy, they don't have time, they can't keep up with all of these issues. Scott mentions, how much time to be on the committees, and he's trying to run a business, he's got a family, and, so to be that representative, to try and listen to what the people want their representatives to do. I think it's important that the city government actually take a more active role in directing the staff, in making decisions about spending the people's money. Our rates, our utility rate, sewer and water rates are just climbing exponentially. They're going to bump up again next month, and what's been happening is the city staff come to the council with a proposal, and the council votes yes or no. I would much rather have the council say, bring us 3 alternatives for this problem, and then the city does that, and then the council says, I need to know more about this one, and then choose from a number of options. I think that yes or no, approving what the city staff is recommending, I think that's really pushing the leadership onto the city staff when the leadership should be on the representatives of the people.
I appreciate those two differences there. I think that those are very interesting. Now, I also want to think about the larger picture of what role city council is, when it functions best, is going to be a team. And what skills or personalities or thoughts do you feel like you bring to that team that is unique, or what role do you play? Are you the quarterback? Are you the punter? Or are you what role is it that you feel like you play? I want to start with Barb.
I am the quarterback, but I've got a heck of a coaching staff. There's just no way I'm gonna run a play without having really looked into what is the defensive, where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses. I'm stubbornly independent in that I just don't take people's word for things. No matter who it is I very much do my own research and try and figure things out for myself and ask a lot of questions. And I think that is a great thing to bring to the table. Again, I'm just seeing a lot of approve or disapprove, yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down, and I would really like to see the city council take a more active role. I'm excellent at compromising. I'm actually very pragmatic, probably much more pragmatic than some might think that I am. You know, I'm a business owner also, and you know, I have that experience of, well, in a perfect world, I wouldn't buy toys from China to sell in my store, but that's not the world we live in now, so how do I mitigate, you know? And so I think that pragmatism is, you know, something that can really be important too.
Would you want to be mayor or mayor pro tem?
Absolutely.
I think it's a different analogy for me. I see the role of, first of all, I see the city structured like a corporation. I see that the city has a gigantic budget, much greater than most companies do. And the role of city council is to act as the board of directors. And to have a great board of directors, you have to have a balanced board of directors where each of the board members bring different skills from their personal life to the board to give perspective to the decision-making process. The perspective is then transferred to your CEO, which in this case would be the city manager, and the CEO is in charge of making sure that the people who work within the organization carry out the vision of the board of directors under the guidelines of the CEO. And so in my particular case, I bring my business experience, my budgetary experience, my level-headed thinking process to the table. That's balanced by some of the other counselors who have different professions or who have different experiences and educations and definitely have different temperaments. And I think because of the balance on council, that we come out with well-balanced direction that we give back and hand off to the CEO to manage and carry out on down the chain of command.
Are you always this calm?
I try to be. I get criticized for it actually at council because I don't speak just to hear myself speak, and we have some counselors who that's their thought process. By being vocal, they are working it out, and mine is much different than that. I take in a lot of information, I process that information, I walk away from the conversation for a while. I might gather some opinions from other people who heard the same conversation and then come back. And when I'm kind of fired up, I'll usually speak in that, and it holds a little more weight for me personally than if I just had this verbal thought process.
I mean, it's obviously, there's a difference in temperament and personalities,
Sure.
and that does change the team dynamic.
Yeah. And like in a marriage or a relationship, I think that balance is what makes it successful. You know, if I had the same hot temperament that Mark Capel has, you know, and we sat right next to each other, you know, there might be fireworks, and some people would probably appreciate
Then
that.
more people would come to city
Yeah,
council
exactly.
meetings.
But I'm not convinced that would make for better policy making or better decision making. It's just, I think that balance is really necessary. I would hate to see any council that had either the same temperament in all 7 members or the same political or philosophical beliefs. It would just be a disastrous process.
Do you think there's a particular either personality type or skill set that's currently missing from city council? Be curious what you think, kind of a brief on that.
Well, from an outside perspective, I'll let you say first, because I work with them more, and you see them from an outside perspective, and so.
You know, just the way you phrase the question, no. You know, I don't really see it as a personality type. I really do. I completely agree with Scott. I think it takes, you know, different strokes. I don't think it's the, you know, everybody in the same measure, with the same process. I think those different kinds of thinking, those different kinds of looking at things, different experience and view of the world makes for a better city, and that's part of the representing. I guess if you know, and it's not a personality type, I was talking to someone and said that I have the first new car of my life, you know, and I got it 2 years ago, but it's still my new car, you know, and I did, you know, and Bend, you know, we really are, we're starting to get to that, where just more and more people in Bend are more affluent and, you know, not necessarily remember what it's like to have a hard time paying that water bill, you know, and thinking, well, I can't actually have my favorite, I'm gonna have to buy Safeway brand cookies this week, you know, and, you know, I think there are a lot of folks out there that are really feeling the problem of affordability, and it's been focused on as affordable housing. But I really think you've just got to look at the whole affordable living of, you know, it's all coming from people's pocketbooks. And, you know, just because our water rates are lower than they are somewhere else, the cost of living in Bend is still really high. People are having a hard time. Right now, you know, a teacher salary is not enough to get into a starter home. You know, a teacher should be a good, decent job that you can actually make a good living and maybe buy a home. Rentals just aren't out there and they're not affordable. You know, I really think I can give a perspective and speak for folks who are really, you know, feeling that kind of pinch and worrying that the focus is going to be for the people that might be coming into Bend instead of focusing on the people that live here now, the Bendites that are here and are worried about their changing communities, whether it's because of neighborhood issues or affordability.
Erin, I think we have time for one more question, and I want you guys to be able to make a presentation about why we should give the endorsement to you or you.
Yeah, Scott didn't get to answer that question yet.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I thought that was a follow-up on that.
No, it's you know, I kind of handed off because I wanted that outside perspective to see what, because I work with all of the counselors and with some of them I've worked for 4 years and some only 2, but I think I have a different insight into them other than just seeing them at the dais. So I think we're pretty well balanced. I think that I think if there's anything lacking on council right now, it's a personality that in the leadership role that might expedite the conversations. Mm-hmm. I think that we spend a lot of time going around and around and around in circles that don't accomplish a whole lot in the problem-solving arena. Whereas in my previous 2 years, we had someone in the leadership role who really kept things rolling along, and so I would think that would be our only challenge right now.
I won't put you on the hot seat and say what is lost, what is gained with Jody not being on the council after this session. Or you can if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I can, you know, Jody and I have a good relationship. We probably disagree on 50% of what goes on, but Jody is really a homework gal. Jody takes prudent notes, does her homework, goes out and talks to a lot of people about every subject, and her experience and that homework will be missed. You know, I don't think that she has been predictable in her decision making, and that comes from the fact that she goes away from the table and challenges herself to find out what might be different from what her opinion was initially. Mm-hmm. But I think that in Councilor Chudowski, you have that same kind of thing. So let's see who fills her seat to see what's missing or gained before that happens. I think that none of us are irreplaceable. None of us are the solution, and I hope there's a lot of qualified people out there in the community who in 4 years or 6 years will feel the urge to step up and lend whatever quality they have.
All right. Do you want to take one final question and then hear the pitches?
Let's see. Do you want to do an issue one or a broader?
Let's do issue. We've been pretty broad.
No one?
Sure.
Okay. So obviously you spoke to this a little bit in the Q&As, but what role do you think the City Council should have in the Mirror Pond decision and its subsequent management, and how much public input do you think should be in that process? Barb, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, number one is Pacific Power has a huge role, and whatever role we wish the city had, whatever role we wish the Parks Board had, it's really, Pacific Power is the big player in this, and there's a whole lot just riding on what are they going to decide to do. They could literally just do nothing. They could honestly just leave that dam where it is and let the river just wash it away. And so until that piece comes to the table, what anybody wants their role to be is a little bit irrelevant. And that kind of brings me to my greatest frustration with the process so far, which is, in particular, again, is the spending of the money. They budgeted $200,000, $100,000 each from the city and the Parks Board to do a survey to find out what the people thought they wanted before they even had, an idea of what the options were or how much they would cost. I was telling, to me, it was just like walking up to somebody and saying, would you like a Lexus? It's like, what does that mean? Are you going to give me one? Do I have to buy it? How much is the insurance? What's the gas money? And for a fraction of that cost, you could actually ask every single person in town. You could send, a actually scientifically valid questionnaire. It's not that expensive to produce and analyze. And so I think that people absolutely, because it's going to cost money, whatever it is, it's going to cost money, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And it's going to be, unless somebody decides that they love it enough that they're going to pocket the expense, we're the ones that are going to be paying for it. And so, just because of that, yeah, we should have a say in what happens to it. If it's going to be, there's been talk of a special district to try and pay for what happens to Mirror Pond. Or is it just going to be the neighborhoods? Right now it seems like there are, disproportionately very, very small number of people, namely the houses right around the pond that, really feel like they have a very strong perspective on what should happen. And I don't think it's fair that they should have a disproportionately strong voice when I have to pay for it. And again, I own a business that's downtown. I love that darn pond. Drake Park is really just exceptional. It is beautiful. But I trust the Parks Department. They do, as far as making beautiful parks. Whatever it happens to be, it's going to be a gorgeous park. I think there's been a lot made of the concern about what will it look like. It will be beautiful. That I think is the least. I'm worried about the water levels that will still support the Colorado Bridge project, because that's $12 million of our money that's being spent on that project. We can't just say, oh well, sorry, we changed our mind downstream and now we can't have that, the 12 million is gone. All of those things need to be considered.
Yeah, I would say that the primary role of the city right now in this project is to be at the table and ensure that the financial burden of this project just isn't dumped on the city to solve. That we work with the 5 partners that are at the table right now in the discussion of how it's paid for, how long that solution will last, what the cost of that solution will be, so that the other players at the table don't go, well, it's your problem, because right now it's kind of soul searching to figure out who's responsible for the silt build and where does the silt come from, therefore who's responsible for getting the silt out. If Pacific Power decides to get rid of the dam, first of all, what does it look like, and then who pays for the solution for what it looks like. So we just need to make sure we are at the table in every conversation, weighing the options, and that those options don't become that it's the city's problem.
Barb, I think it's more traditional to have a challenger give her pitch first.
All right, here I go. I have set, and this goes back to your first question as to whether we're actually insane to want the job. But you know, it honestly seems to me that indicative of if you're doing a good job is if every single person in town is mad at you some of the time. You know, there's one group of people that always loves you, I don't think you're doing a good job representing the entire community. At any given time, there's going to be somebody who's going to be unhappy about whatever your latest decision was. And, you know, I'm willing to take that on. I'm willing to take that on because, you know, I think Scott spoke so well about Jody. That woman, there is not a question you can ask her that she does not know the answer. It's really remarkable how much work and research she does, and the memory she has, and describing that she makes unpredictable votes. I think that's I don't think I would not be someone where you could just say, well, Campbell's going to do this. She always votes here, or she always votes with this or that person. The thing that got me to want to take this job, even though it might indicate that I'm less than sane, was the filtration plant, where the company the city paid to advise them gave the opposite advice to Baker City. Baker City hired the same company. They told Baker City, no, don't do membrane. Membrane's ridiculously expensive. They told us, oh yeah, you gotta have membrane. They told Baker City that they would build membrane for them for less money than they would build it for us. And nobody ever asked why. How do you not ask, the city staff said, this is what we think we should do. Quite honestly, I would say the answer why is because they'd already put millions of dollars into that, committed themselves to building that before they had decided they were going to. And I think that's horrific. I think it is irresponsible with the taxpayers' money, because when we say it costs more, it's $15 or $20 million more. It's 2 or 3 times more money. And there are some communities that simply don't believe it's going to get us through a fire in the watershed, which was the biggest argument for that one, was that if there's a fire up there, then this is what's going to keep that system going. And there are other communities, Spokane, Washington tossed out membrane in the first round of research. To not be asking, those questions, I think it's really what inspired me, even though, I'm a business owner, I'm busy, it takes a lot of time to do the job, and it's a tough job, but I think I'm needed. I think I can help.
That's a good segue for me, because when I first ran for council 4 years ago, your perception of what happens in council and decision making and the policies that are at the table is very much different than the actual process and amount of information that exists in the decisions themselves. Once you're on the inside and you get the information and you have meeting after meeting after meeting about every decision that we make, you realize that the information is all there, and it's well-rounded and it's well-founded, and the experience, it takes you 2 years to get up to speed. It takes you a long time. That's even if you take the extra time it takes to do the research on decisions that have been talked about for, in some cases, 20 years, which our surface water project has been in the works for that long. I'm up to speed. I've spent 4 years, this is my 4th year of being on the inside of the track, dealing with the largest infrastructure projects we've ever dealt with in the history of our community in a very short period of time. All of those decisions on infrastructure based on the fact that we have growth projections here that we won't stop and can't stop, and currently go out and spend money promoting to encourage. So I want to carry on being up to speed, continuing that infrastructure plan, because the plan is where we have the greatest possibility of getting off the tracks. If we don't have an adequate plan and we don't understand that we will grow at the pace that we're going to grow for the next 20 years, policy will continue to be reactive instead of proactive, and we will make bad, expensive decisions. So I'm willing to spend the time. I don't have to spend some time getting up to speed. And I believe the decisions that I made in my role as a counselor made a difference over the last 4 years. And I want to continue to be that voice of level-headed reasoning from my perspective at the table in the council.
Thank you both.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I really
Thank
appreciate
you. Yeah.
appreciate you both taking the time and you know,
I appreciate your election coverage. I know it was your goal to expand your coverage this time, and it's appreciated. It's good to see. Is that you?
Yep.
I'm
been
serious.
great.
Great. Yeah. It's hard to get the information out to the voters. It's hard to find them and meet them and talk to them and get them inspired to vote. And so kudos to you for working on that.
thank you.
And I was actually nervous about this part, this kind of in an editorial board
Yeah.
review, because I wasn't sure, and I never am, that what you say in a public arena or with an opponent sitting next to you is actually what you would say if you were sitting here alone. But I mean,
And I
think the
appreciate that
process-
you put the entire record,
Yeah.
available for people. I think that's amazing and really.
We hope so. This is our first attempt.
Oh,
We hope that.
You did 2 years ago.
Oh, gee, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
This is our new camera.
Oh, I know. So the camera might not.
I
So
Right.
said last night,
okay. So this might have just been the rehearsal. We'll be back in hopefully
what kind
when
of
it's not
movie
so
were those?
frizzy here.
This is great. I mean, you both are very well informed. You both speak very elegantly to the issues, and it's nice to see that, you know, and it makes our job a little bit more difficult, you know, and hopefully
Good.
you guys feel like the write-up is fair and reviewed. So if you have any,
You've been fair so far. I mean, you know, when I filled out this questionnaire last time and it said at the bottom of it that we reserve the right to edit this, I was like, oh no.
I know.
Because I know sometimes that my positions are not in alignment with your publication, and so when I read that, I was like, oh no.
Definitely do try to be fair and, as much as possible capture the essence of, what was being said if we do have to shorten things.
So I
So,
appreciate that.
And again, put online, if you'd like to see, their full comments, they're available online. These are the times we live in, which I think, this
Yeah.
is a great thing. The information that's available to people is really remarkable if they'll take the time to, seek it out.
hopefully they will, so.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's so
thank you.
nice to meet you.
if there's
Yeah.
any follow-up information or
Okay.
literature that you want to provide,
Great.
please feel free to do so without clogging up our email.
Absolutely.